It's going faster than usual. Right.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable for the week of November 11th. Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there.
Yeah, I hope they're all going to have a great day. Hopefully, Marines yesterday was Marine Corps birthday, 246 years.
Happy
Um,
belated birthday, guys.
yeah, and
Thank you.
we want all the Marines, every veteran, everybody who's serving to always have a peaceful day wherever they are, as much as possible.
Yes, definitely. Um, and as some of you may or not know, both Michael Vasquez and myself served in the United States Marine Corps. So yes, we did celebrate the Marine Corps birthday yesterday, and today we have Veterans Day. This isn't to toot our own horn, but I do want to bring up something. Both Michael and I took an oath when we enlisted into the Marine Corps,
Mhm.
and that oath was to support and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath never had a expiration date. It didn't when my end of active service, my EAS date arrived. My oath did not stop on that date, and I don't believe Michael's stopped on that date either.
No.
In fact, I know many of our military brethren in all branches believe the same thing. Okay, they took that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they take that oath very seriously. A lot of what we do here at the Liberty First Foundation is in honor of that oath that was taken by myself. Now, Frank is not former military, but he is former law enforcement, and they take a very similar oath
By myself.
as well. And they too, their oath doesn't end just because they decide to leave law enforcement. We need to hold our representatives accountable to the oath they take when they take office. Because, plain and simple, their oath doesn't have an expiration date either. Okay? They swear and affirm to abide by the Constitution of the United States, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is a major component of the oath of anybody in any type of elected or appointed office. And we have too many of them that blatantly disregard their oath of office. Now, we just got through with elections. And in January, these newly elected representatives will be taking office. On January 3rd, the federal um, representatives will be taking their seats in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. Across the state, we have governors that are going to be, again, taking the oath of office, some newly elected governors and some that were reelected. And all these officers will take this oath.
Yeah. It's
As
amazing.
American citizens, we have a civic responsibility and a civic duty to hold our representatives accountable to the oath of office they take. And if we are unwilling to do that, we are unwilling to defend the freedoms that we enjoy in this country. And we deserve what we get. Plain and simple. So if we don't want to hold our representatives accountable, then why do we even vote?
Well,
Why
Mike,
do we have elections every 2 years?
Mike, I got to put in something there and interject. It's not just about the oath. It's the First Amendment. It is a foundation that America is built on. Because again, the
Mhm.
Constitution doesn't give us the rights. It acknowledges that the rights exist. We have a fundamental right by birth to question our government, to hold them accountable, which is
Exactly.
on top of the oath. So there's the oath of the public to be able to question them and say, are you doing your job efficiently and effectively? And if they're not, to question them and to vote them out. And then there's the oath that many of us in law enforcement and the military take, which goes above and beyond saying, okay, not only will we question our government, not only will we speak up our mind, we will defend others in our nation with our lives to make sure that they can do so in peace, something that you don't see anywhere else in the world. Anywhere else. No other country in the world is willing to have people stand up and say, I will bleed and possibly die so that you can say something I absolutely disagree with. It's amazing. And people
If
don't
I could
think of
take a
it that
minute to
much.
interject here, as far as oaths go, there's a significant thing that most people miss when it comes to oaths. When you are a member of the military or a member of law enforcement, that is something that you volunteer to do for the most part, outside of a draft situation.
Mhm.
Uh, Somebody makes an active choice to join the military or join law enforcement or to be a first responder or something where they're taking the initiative to put their life on that line and sign that check. Now, politicians, they don't get to take that oath. We give them the opportunity to take that oath. There's a big difference. You have a right to join the military if you are so eligible. You have the right to take a test, become law enforcement. You have a right to run for office. But the military and the police department are two different kind of things. These are people who, for the most part, reached out and said, I want to serve, and the penalty for my failure or the cost of my service may be my life,
Mhm.
maybe my happiness, maybe my family, because there's a lot that military and law enforcement officers give up in order to serve.
Right.
Politicians are asking you, will you hire me to take that oath? We genuinely don't know what their reasoning is for applying for that job in the first place. Why do they want that job? Do they want that job to enrich themselves? Do they want that job to enrich their country? Do they want that job to find all the loopholes and benefits that are found in elected office? We don't know. We can only determine the need for them to take that oath as a matter of job performance in upholding that oath. Now, how this is different from the regular citizenry is that the regular citizenry doesn't take an oath. We have our civic duties, and I can only think of three: pay your taxes, vote, and go to jury duty. Outside of that, your civic duties are minimal at best. But the citizenry don't take an oath. The only reason that they would defend or defend the Constitution or protect from all their enemies, foreign and domestic, is a matter of self-preservation. They have to preserve their own lives, preserve their own communities, preserve their own families. Some of us take it very serious that it's our duty to be a good citizen because we need to defend the Constitution that lists our rights against the government. So we take it very seriously that we have to do these things. But what I find the most interesting is that there is another class of people in this country, American citizens, that do take an oath. Those are the American citizens that have immigrated here as a matter of choice to become American citizens.
Did we lose Frank for a second there?
Yeah, it's
No.
looking like it because, and I think he's on a great.
No. I'm here.
Um,
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. Now we can.
Now
yeah.
we can hear you.
All right. Like I said, those people that come from other countries, they leave a world either good or bad. They risk everything they have coming to an unknown land to learn a language they don't know, to understand laws and customs they don't know. Everything from road signs to education. They know nothing about America except what they've heard in their home country. But as a price to become an American citizen, they take an oath. The same oath that military and law enforcement members take to support and defend the Constitution of the American fabric. And many immigrants to this country take their oath more seriously than American citizens do the three civic duties that I mentioned earlier. Because I don't know anybody that's eager to go to jury duty. I don't know anybody that's eager to pay their taxes. I sure as hell don't know anybody that's eager to go vote, especially in light of what's happened in the last couple of elections, where we've seen such a level of ineptness or corruption, however that you, whichever part of the scale you want to put the happenings of the last couple of years in, whatever you believe it to be. Americans don't have faith in that system. Now, the immigrants still do have a little bit of faith in that system because many of them come from a country where the votes are tallied the moment the polls closed. Because it's not a matter of who you voted for, it's a matter of who counts the votes. And they counted the votes before the votes were cast. So they still have a little bit of faith in our system. But Americans are losing that faith. Every day, we lose a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more of that faith. And it's shocking to me in the days following what may have been one of the most important elections in American history as far as the off-season elections, is that here we are on Marine Corps birthday, and here we are honoring our veterans, and we can't even get the voting straight.
It's interesting, Frank. It's because there's so many things that are happening. I had an argument or a discussion with a couple of progressives actually yesterday and the last couple of days. Did in our community, in the southern tier of New York, as an example, we had a group of individuals who were going around to different polling locations and they were intimidating voters. And this is something that isn't an opinion. I confirmed it 4 separate times on election day. 4 separate sources, impeachable, unimpeachable sources, unimpeachable. And I know for a fact who went out and spoke to those groups. I know what they were told. I know that the campaign that they were there supporting, they were told to turn them away. And I know they were intimidating votes. And I know that election, those supporters, their candidate won. And the question is, how many people were turned away or were made fearful, or there is an allegation some of them were paid to go and vote? And how and the bigger issue here is that because it happened and it is a known fact, and the fact is the news media was notified of this early in the day on election day, so the public could have been warned, could have been made aware. Instead, they said nothing. How many people no longer have trust and confidence in elections because of that incident? And we had similar incidents to that across the country. Excuse me. Across the country, we had similar types of incidents. How many people now have less trust, faith, and confidence in our elections and the results of those elections because certain groups of people were allowed to intimidate voters and no one said anything? The mainstream media said nothing about this. There was no announcement from the Board of Elections about this. How do you have confidence?
It's hard to have confidence when you have complicit accomplices.
It's. I think that's
Well,
the
this isn't the first time that we've had groups of people basically creating a hostile environment at polling places against other people. The Ku Klux Klan used to do it throughout the South when they were huge. Okay, and that's literally what stopped a lot of people of color from voting. Okay, we've seen it throughout our history where we've had groups of people intimidate voters at the polls,
yeah, but the
and
end
we have laws against it. And why
right.
those laws are not being enforced right now, it's beyond comprehension.
And that's my point, Mike. It's that we have an answer to it. We made a decision that that was unacceptable. We set up laws and we enforced those laws to not let that happen. And we had the public speak out against it so that would not happen in the future. And now it's happening and it's accepted and it's okay if it's coming from a certain political point of view. And that's unacceptable to me because it makes elections worse. We have less trust and faith. This 2022, at the end of the day, wasn't about the economy. It wasn't about the direction of the country. It wasn't about how the foreign nations are looking at the leadership and direction of America and saying it's time for them to go rogue because no one's holding them accountable. At the end of the day, it's not even about the recession or the food shortage. At the end of the day, it's about whether or not Americans have confidence in who is going to be in elected office and whether their voice, their vote, actually matters anymore. And we are more and more seeing that we are straying towards a dictatorship than a constitutional republic because their vote, their voices and their votes are being nullified or intimidated or otherwise caused to be interfered with. And that ultimately is my biggest question. That was the biggest failure of 2022 to me.
Well, I find it rather ironic that in the 2016 election, it was the left saying that we couldn't trust the vote. We couldn't trust the vote. The vote was manipulated. The vote had foreign collusion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In 2020, and the right was saying in 2016 that we had to accept the vote. The vote was what it was. Okay, it was infallible, and we had secure elections. Come 2020, everything reversed because all of a sudden we had a different party that was taking office. And here we are in 2022, and we have again a very similar scenario playing out. And we've got both sides saying, depending on which side won in different areas, you can't trust the vote. Okay,
Which
you either have voter intimidation or you have voter collusion or you have um, votes that were cast by people that shouldn't be casting votes. I mean, it's all across the board. Okay, so really, this isn't something that is just recent. Okay, this has been
No.
going on since at least 2016, and actually, it's been going on since before that, because there's a lot of questioning being done about the Obama elections, and even back in Clinton's day. There's a lot of questioning of the elections when Clinton was elected to office as well. So we really need to say, hey, what's going on with our elections? When are we, the people, actually going to stand up and say, hey, fix this, make it so that we can actually have integral elections that we know are secure, that we know are not being manipulated, that we know are true?
We can't say that now. At this time,
No, we can't.
and I think that leads to civil war.
And the thing is we cannot trust who is determined as the winner. We can't trust if Republican wins. How can we trust that that Republican actually won that election? If a Democrat wins, how can we trust that that Democrat actually won? Because we have no election integrity, and
I mean,
we've had calls for audits of the elections over and over and over again. And depending on who won the election, they do nothing but fight tooth and nail against those audits.
We have to have
I
audit.
personally believe that every election should be audited,
Yes. Hmm.
okay, regardless of who the winner is, and it should be something that is
It should be automatic.
compulsory.
It should be automatic in every election,
Yes.
every time, no matter. At this point, that's what we have to. We need an amendment that, regardless of who wins or loses, in every election, every time, there should be an audit immediately.
there also has to be a unified system with which every federal office is chosen, regardless of state that the election takes place in. If the states want to use some cockamamie, whacked out thing to figure out who their town legislatures are, or who their mayor is, or who their governor is, fine. There's a certain point where that doesn't have national implications at the immediate level. But when it comes to our representation, our congressmen, our senators, our president, there needs to be an infallible, unified, verifiable manner in which the votes are cast, tabulated, tallied, and decided. Because without that, there is absolutely no way that you can have. Imagine how. Well, you guys are probably more into sports than I am, but how many NFL teams are there?
Don't know.
I
I
have
don't
no
think
clue.
Baseball teams, there's got to be 40 something teams, right? Who the hell knows?
something like
Imagine
that.
if every single baseball game went by a different set of rules, and then at the end of the season, you have a World Series that's played. How do you do that? You can't. You can't have football games taking place by every. I mean, to give you the perfect example of how screwed up something is, my favorite sport was always boxing. And boxing had a very set standard of rules. But then every different organization wanted a different set of rules. Do we go 10 rounds? Do we go 12? Do we go 15? Do we go 18? Do we have unlimited? How are we going to break up the weight classes? How many points are a must? What's a knockdown worth? What's this worth? What's that worth? How do we go between? How do we figure out a draw, a split decision, whatever? That's why there's 37,000 belts in boxing now. That's why there are 7,800 different weight divisions in boxing. And it's now why the UFC is the number one combat sport in the United States, because people had enough of it. They had enough of it. They said one set of rules, shorter weight classes, two divisions. And that's what they did. That's why you have mixed martial arts is now the predominant combat sport in the United States. It is in a lot of cases outperforming baseball, football, hockey, basketball, and everything else. Why? Because it's easy to follow. You know who your champions are. The rules are clear. Two people go into an octagon with one referee and one person wins, or there's a draw. When you have debacles like what's going on in Arizona right now, with the Secretary of State of the state of Arizona is running for the office of governor whilst simultaneously overseeing the vote count in America's most narrowly contested race. And she's on the floor where they're counting the votes. Folks, there's a problem.
Conflict of interest, of course.
There's a problem here. Now, I've always been of the mind where if you are in political office and you're running for a different political office, you should advocate your responsibilities and office of the office that you're currently holding. Because while you're running for office, you obviously don't have time to do the job that you were previously elected for. So step down from that office, let somebody else take over. Now you're just another unemployed person like your opponent, and you have no responsibility except to campaign and smile for the cameras and ask questions. In Katie Hobbs's situation, she doesn't answer any questions. She doesn't do any press. She doesn't do any debates. She doesn't do anything. And we had to believe that there's 0.1% separating these two candidates, and that it's going to take a week and a half to count the vote, when they've already figured out every other contest in the state.
Well,
it's not a matter of why things don't take time to count the votes. They take time to count how many votes they need.
That's one way of looking at it. And I'll say this, I was talking to someone, again, a progressive, an older progressive, not a younger progressive.
So they never took the Churchillian advice?
What do you mean?
Well, it was Churchill that said if you're 25 and a conservative, you have no heart, but if you're 45 and a liberal, you have no brain.
Well, that's on them. But he's an older gentleman, and he happened to mention, because we were talking about New York's race, which is similar to what we're seeing in Arizona, a couple of other races, where the polls, actually across the nation, the polls were so massively off. Not one thing was correct in these polls. And everyone's asking the question, why is there such a difference? Now, the suggestion from the older progressive that I spoke to said, well, it's because young people don't take polls. And that's an interesting statement. He's like, they're just not picking up the phones and they're not going to take the poll. Except he's wrong. And that logic is wrong. It's a great excuse. It sounds good. Young people don't take polls. Except look at the actual data in every poll that's been taken. Young people are in the poll. They do answer the poll. We do have data on 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. We do see that on a regular basis. So they are included in the polling, which makes me then have to say, if we have seen a year of data, and even in the last week, all the data is telling us the same thing. It's going in the same direction. It is in the same magnitude. And then we get elections across the nation that they're not even close to being anywhere near the data that we see. What's going on? And when we get these excuses, well, young people don't take the polls, except the polls include young people, that is wrong. So something is off. Something has changed. And that tells me, again, that leads us to, I don't trust the elections. We're getting more and more of that than we have ever gotten before. And this is a problem. Again, we need this constitutional audit everywhere in the nation, because it's the only way. It's because I'm listening to all these excuses that I hear. Well, you just don't understand. Again, it's always with this, you just don't understand. Yeah, I do. I look at the data. I look at the information. It's what I do. And the data isn't matching up to the results. Something is wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong. And it is leading us, I say it again, this is leading us closer to a civil war. than anything else I've seen in 54 years of my life. And that scares me. It scares me.
I just have a problem trying to figure out when we tabulated the votes for the races that have already pretty much been counted, that there is a 6 million vote difference between the left and the right. 6 million votes cast. 6 million more votes cast for right-sided candidates than left-sided. The victory in most of these races that I've seen were squeaky at best. And there wasn't the wave. The vote tally didn't translate into the wave that was said. Maybe the wave was translated into vote tally and not office itself. You say, well, you're going to get 6 million more votes than your opponent nationwide. Well, golly, that sounds like you're going to take every office by a landslide. But not if you're only taking the offices that you already held, or you just barely, the votes didn't mean anything, where your candidate got 95% of the votes anyway. So you could have had half the voters stay home for that race, and then you guys still would have won. But in states like New York, where what is the vote difference, Mike, in New York? 900,000 or less?
Only 43% of people voted. It was
Right.
only 4 out of 10.
New York is still shy. 1.7 million registered voters that didn't bother to go out to the polls, and that's of both parties.
Well, and
now,
that
if you were to
really
translate that across the map, and you look at how many counties did what's her face win? Like 7 counties out of
the cities.
She won the cities. If the voters in the rest of the state got off their asses and did something about it, they would probably have flipped that seat. However, I have a feeling that a good number of those people probably don't trust the elections at all. And say, why am I going to bother? They're just going to steal it. It's going to be those 5 boroughs that are going to, their voice, they get 2 votes for every one of mine. They're not going to get off their asses and do it.
Okay, there's actually a couple things that I want to interject here. Okay, first, Frank, you said you wanted a system that was for federal elections that pretty much made it the same throughout every state. Okay, right. In order to do that, we would have to have a constitutional amendment.
Yes.
Because Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 states the time, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations except as to places and the choosing of senators. Okay, that gives a little leeway for Congress to enact some laws and regulations concerning voting at the federal level. However, ultimately, it is up to the state on how they determine how their elections work. Okay, so in order to actually change that and create a system on federal elections that is the same across the nation, there would have to be a constitutional amendment, basically taking the rulemaking for federal elections out of the state's hands. Okay, and that's the first thing I wanted to interject.
Well, me personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, like I said, it would take a constitutional amendment. Okay, and if the people wanted that, I'm all for it. Okay, I'm all for changing the Constitution, provided it is changed according to what is laid out in Article 5 of the Constitution. Now, that being said, I also want to bring up a comment earlier that Dahl had.
Was that the one about New York State, the way they're counting?
Yes.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that it doesn't work.
So, Dahl brings up a comment. Speaking of Constitution, in the case of the governor's race, this is in New York State, would it be an ideal help to help balance rural versus urban vote by using a state version of the electoral college?
No.
I had this thought back when Como started winning the election and he won 3 elections in a row. And it was obvious at that time that the only reason why Como was winning the elections was because of the vote in the capital district and New York City.
Same thing as Hochul.
Okay. And that's actually the governor has been selected more often than not because of the vote in the capital district and New York City.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have to deal with the way the state constitution is set up in the state of New York. Now, that's also typical in other states as well. Okay. Chicago greatly influences who the governor is going to be in the state of Illinois.
Yeah. LA, the same thing. LA and San Francisco. Yeah.
LA, San Francisco, Sacramento, predominantly determine who's going in San Diego, predominantly
Yes.
determine who's going to be the governor in California. We see this across all states, honestly. And I don't know if the answer necessarily is an electoral college or something similar to the electoral college for the executive office in a state, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea either.
Well, I
Because
think it's a
I
bad idea.
do think that the rural areas are grossly underrepresented with their voice as far as when it comes to voting in the executive of the state,
See, and I
i.e., the
disagree.
governor.
I completely disagree, and I'll explain why. You see, uh, the problem isn't that they're underrepresented. People in upstate New York are not underrepresented. People in upstate New York don't vote. The problem isn't the way the voting is going through. They don't vote. The people in the cities vote en masse, and they vote more often and at higher percentages than what we see in the rest of all the other 60 counties across New York State. You need people to show up and vote.
Oh, I
Because
agree. And a lot of people have lost heart because they've been told pretty much all their lives, you're never going to outvote the city. You're never going to be able to take the vote away from the city. City's going to control everything.
and I understand, and so there is a media bias, which we know the media is left leaning, and so that bias goes in hand with don't vote, your vote won't matter, you
Left
won't make a difference.
leaning.
Well, I'm being nice
The
here.
the Tower of Pisa doesn't lean that far to the left.
I understand. 80% of all people in newsrooms are left leaning or progressive outright. I understand. And there's been lots of polling and lots of studies on that, surveys and such. But you have the media telling people your vote doesn't matter. You don't have to vote. It's already been decided for you. You have people in rural communities don't come out and vote as often for a lot of reasons, but more importantly, they just don't. They have apathy. There is a huge amount. When 4 out of 10 people are voting, that is apathy. So doing different weightings does not affect that, because what about if there's an election? What if you get 5 out of 10 people voting? That weighting now unbalances the election. If you get 6 out of 10 people voting, that weighting unbalances the election. That's the problem when you try to correct for not enough people showing up, because your problem isn't how many people from this area or that area voted. It's that they didn't show up to vote. The majority didn't come out and vote. There's your problem. So we need to
And
solve it by
I
getting to the vote.
I I couldn't agree more with you. Okay, and one of the biggest problems, especially in places where, like New York State, okay, and New York State, honestly, the population of rural New York versus urban New York is relatively balanced.
Yeah.
However, rural New York has been convinced that their voice cannot override the urban area
Yeah.
of the state. Okay, they've been convinced that. And the truth is, if rural New Yorkers would actually get out there and vote, they have more than enough votes to override the votes out of the urban areas.
You don't even need that. There's 5 million gun owners in New York State. There's approximately 3.5 million registered voters in New York State. There's more people who have guns than have votes. If the gun owners all came out and voted, you could pass anything in New York State.
Now,
Yeah,
the
well,
other thing that I also want to bring up too is there are a lot of eligible voting age people that never register to vote.
Yeah.
And that to me is also that is almost a worse problem than people that are registered to vote that aren't vote.
well, maybe if we tied the vote to their tax return, that might have something to do with it.
It
Now,
already
Wanna
is.
I was actually doing a little
No, I mean,
research.
hey, you want to have your taxes returned after you file? Well, you know, you might
I
want
was
to
doing a
vote.
little research, Frank, and there are a lot of states or a lot of countries that their elections, the voter turnout in their elections, it is astronomical. Okay,
Well,
there's some countries that their voter turnout is as high as 98%.
yeah.
And these are actually countries that don't have coerced elections. Um, because I know there are some countries that, yeah, the votes are counted before the election even happens.
Yeah.
But there are other countries where that doesn't happen, and their voter turnout, like I said, is as high as 98%. Which in the United States, I think our highest election was 67%, maybe 72
68%. It was the
percent.
election year, which was actually, I believe it was Obama's first election, 68%. And that was the high
Then
since 1962.
we get
And
instead of saying just
and
wondering
when we
about what.
look at, we only have when we only have 63% or 6 in 10 Americans voting, and that's just looking at registered voters. That's not even counting voting age people. That's just
Mhm.
looking at registered voters. And we only have 6 in 10 registered voters actually going to the polls on election day. That is very, very sorry.
Then maybe we got to start looking at these other countries and ask them, what exactly is it that drives your voter turnout to the levels that it is?
Now,
Because we're missing something.
some, I'm actually getting ready to address that because you actually touched on that earlier a little bit, tying the vote to your tax return. Okay. Some states make it or some countries, I keep saying states, some countries make it mandatory that you vote. It's compulsory. Okay. And if you fail to vote, it is actually a criminal act, not voting.
I don't agree
I
with that.
don't think we should go that far because, again, we run into the realm of freedom of speech. However, I do think that we do need to tie some type of incentive to
Well,
get people that
incentivizes is a
are
bad thing.
actually eligible to vote to vote.
No, no, no. Absolutely not. Because you're buying votes at that point. So the moment you put in an incentive, now you're buying votes. The fact is, let me, from my point of view, again, this is from my point of view. Let me break this down for people because I don't think everyone, and I don't mean you guys, I mean just the public in general, they haven't caught on to something really easy. We keep being told, well, we need to make it easier to vote because people can't vote, even though people can vote and they do vote, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. The proportions are always the same and they are almost identical, regardless of what color, sex, sexual preference, religion. They're all almost identical across the country, anywhere you want to pick. So it isn't a race thing, it isn't a sex thing. There's none of that. We have made it as simple as possible. We have early voting. We have mail-in ballots. Some states have electronic voting, and we have in-person voting in a location. We have made it as simple as possible for every American to vote, and they do. And we get 4 out of 10 voting. It's not because it's difficult. It's not because it's unavailable. It's not because they don't have an incentive. They do, because every election affects your paycheck. It affects your ability to get a job. It affects the economy and the world in general. We already have the incentive. Everything is there. They don't want to vote. There is voter apathy. Why? Because people have been convinced their voice doesn't matter. Their vote is nullified de facto by the feeling or the impression that has been put out there that they are meaningless. And therefore, there's only 4 out of 10 people who vote. And I've done this math before. One person's a big donor, one's a small donor, one person speaks up, and one person just votes. There's only 2 people that the politicians are paying attention to: big voter and small vote, big donor and small donor. And that's it. This is the problem we have. It's voter apathy. It's not anything else. Everything else is out the window. It's not ease. It's not incentive. It is purely apathy because people do not trust the government, nor do they trust the election. And that's what we have to address, which is a tough thing, I admit, but that's the way I see it. It breaks down like that in every election for a long time now, I think.
All right, well, speaking of splitting, I got to do just that right now. Just had an alert come in. I have a little bit of an emergency I have to attend to. I'll leave you guys to it tonight till next weekend. It's not a big deal, just pet related. I have to attend to it now. All right, guys, be well, and we'll catch up one day this week. You guys keep going at it. We'll talk to you guys soon. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Take care, Frank.
Be careful. But
I do agree that there is a huge amount of voter apathy. And when you also start discussing anything dealing with politics and so forth, you get a lot of people say, well, I don't do politics. I don't do politics.
Yeah, that's a message that's been pushed out there. Huge. We have a lot of groups of individuals who've been pushing that. You don't have to pay attention. It doesn't matter. It's okay. You don't have to pay attention to the details. So we have low information voters and high information voters.
Mm-hmm.
Low information voters watch a 30-second ad and go out and vote. They vote straight down the line because of their party affiliation and have absolutely no idea. Do you know every single candidate in America, no matter where you are, if you walk in, you're going to get, if you're on the ballot, 20% of the vote. Guaranteed. You will get 20% of the vote if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Automatically, you haven't said a word. You could be dead. No one could have your picture of your face. You just have to have an R or a D behind your name, and you get 20% of the vote automatically. Why? People voting straight down the line.
Yep.
The rest of the race, the rest of the election is 60% of the people who aren't just voting straight down the line. And
honestly, I would like to see the whole primary process done away with.
No, I like primaries.
Okay. And here's my reasoning why. Okay. Primaries are, except with some state exceptions, primaries are exclusively ran by either the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. You have Republican primaries or you have Democrat primaries.
Okay.
You don't hear of a Libertarian primary. You don't hear of a Green Party primary. You don't hear of, in New York State, a Working Party primary.
But they do have them. They're just not advertised, but they have them.
I've never seen at our town hall, which is where our primaries are held, I have never seen a primary vote for the Libertarian Party, Workers' Party, or the Green Party, or the Conservative Party, or any other.
Let me clarify, because they're not on the major ballots. They don't get the major attention. Those are things that are handled in these are fringe for the lack of better wording, they're all fringe parties. They're small third parties. So all of their debates, all of their um, selection of candidates, their primaries, they're all happening away from the news media and the cameras, but they have them. They just don't ever make it to the news. The news media doesn't care because there's only two major parties. There's
Like
only
I said, I've never seen our town hall hold a primary other than Republican or Democrat. And I
right.
drive by
You
it
never will.
every day.
Yeah, but you never will. You never will because they're
Okay.
third parties.
So
There's
then
two-
how's it a primary?
It's still a primary within their organization.
Where do I go vote?
You don't. You're not a libertarian. You're not Green
Exactly.
Party. Yeah, but that doesn't mean they
Okay.
don't.
If I was a libertarian, where would I go vote?
You would be with the Libertarian Party. You'd be doing it
Where
in.
would I go vote in my primary?
You wouldn't
Give
have
me a
primary in
location.
that manner. It's not done in the same way. It's not handled the same
Then
way.
it's not a true primary.
For that party or for that
It's
community.
not a true primary.
Well, then how many candidates are on the ballot? How do you determine
Okay.
who gets on the ballot?
But you see what I'm saying? It's not a true primary.
No, I understand. I understand the meaning you're saying, but that brings us to the question: okay, who gets on the ballot? In terms of, do we let the Green Party in? They have what, 1% of the population
I don't
in
care.
New York State.
I don't care if they have 0.1% or
Well, then you're
0.01%.
then
If
you're
they have
talking about
candidates,
50
then they should
parties.
be on the ballot.
Then you're talking about for every race, you would have 20 different candidates for every single race.
So
It would literally take a week to get through just your local races. If you're talking about percentages that low, then I mean that in some areas that could be as many as 5 people. So you're talking about literally sheets of sheets, reams of paper just to go through all the different parties for a local race, which is why they, and now maybe, and I understand your reasoning, maybe the answer is instead of the limitation they've put on is absolutely stupid. How well are you polling in polls throughout the state? That is stupid. Are you polling 10% or more in the state? That's a matter of money and news media coverage on whether someone's going to poll above a certain number because they're not giving those people access. So it's unfair. There should be a different system, like how many members do you have as a proportion of or compared to the population. So if you have 10% of a congressional district, you've got 70,000 members in the Conservative Party or the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, whatever party it may be. You've got 75,000 members. That's 10% membership of the total population that are going to be affected by Congress. You get to have a vote. And if you happen to be in the rent too damn high party, which has 2% of the population, you don't get on the ballot. You don't have a candidate. See, now that would make sense to me. That I think is what you're thinking of, and that would work. But to say that, everybody who says I'm a candidate, you get on the ballot, we won't get anywhere with the system. Does that sound like it makes
yes,
sense?
we would. We used to.
Well,
Primaries
yes.
weren't a thing until the 1910s.
Then the population of the United States exploded. We have 350 million people, 116 million voting eligible individuals. There's no way. Again, look at a congressional district, 750,000 people. 750,000 people to be able to vote. You literally, if you don't have some stipulation, you could literally have reams of candidates. This guy has 5 people who support him. That one has 12 people that support him. They're on the ballot. It's overwhelming because of the laws of numbers. And to make it wieldable, we do need a limitation. I think that limitation should be your party has, as an example, 10% of the population in that vote, and I'm using Congress as a example, that's 750,000 people. Do you have 75,000 members in that congressional district? You do. You got a candidate on the ballot, people can vote for that person automatically. It doesn't matter what the state thinks or any in that community, in that congressional district. So if the congressional district right next to it doesn't, the Libertarian Party or the Green Party, they don't have 10%, they don't get a candidate on that ballot. But in this one, they do. So it's not relevant to how many members do you have in the state. It's in that district for that election. Do you have 10%? You do. You get on the ballot, period. I think that's a good system everywhere so that every community has the opportunity to have candidates that reflect that community. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. Okay. And here's one of the biggest problems I have
Okay.
is it's very easy for the Republican and Democrat parties to literally run roughshod over any district. And they do. Okay. And one of the biggest ways that they do that is by the advertising of you'll split the vote and you will cause your enemy party to be elected in. Okay. So let's say you're in the Green Party.
Yeah, that's
right?
always, yeah.
And you got a Green Party candidate on the ballot. The Democrats will say, well, if you vote green, then you are going to cause the Republican to get elected.
Let them say it. Let them say it.
Okay.
That's on the Green Party to answer that objection. That's politics.
And the same thing happens whenever, okay, we saw it when Sharp was on the ballot here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you vote for Sharp, you're going to ensure that Como is elected.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're going to split the vote.
And
Okay,
that,
and we see that across election after election after election after election. And that's one of the big reasons why we see a lot of these minor parties not be able to actually compete.
but that's why I say we make it local to that community because they have a presence. If you've got 10%, you can reach the public and it forces and it gives a reason for the media to cover you. Now, as for that argument, oh, you're going to split the vote, that's on that candidate and that party to explain why it doesn't matter or why it's a good thing or why they should win outright. Once you have a third candidate in the race, because we have been so two-party system, there's always you could have a party. I don't care what you want to call it the Rainbow Stripes and Polka Dots Party. I don't care what the name is. It's the Rainbow Stripes and Polka Dot Party. They're the third party, and one or both of the other parties are going to say, if you vote for them, they're going to take a vote away and we're going to lose. It's always going to be that way. It's on them to convince those voters vote anyway. And if you have four candidates, five candidates, it's still the same argument. It's always going to exist. That's politicking. That's on them. I think the answer is, do they show up on the ballot? Yes. Give them the guarantee that if they get that community to accept their point of view, to go with their guideline as a party, if they can convince members of that community that this ideology is good, they get on the ballot. Regardless of what any other community is doing, I don't care. This community says that's a valid point of view. Therefore, they get to be on the ballot and vote because they're in that community. That's what I think it should be based on. That community, that percentage, and they get to be in there because those are your neighbors you're talking about, as opposed to, I don't know what the Green Party's doing. And, if the Green Party has voters, if all of a sudden Staten Island went all for the Green Party, they'd have a national or excuse me, a New York State presence, they mean nothing to me. And why would I want to have their candidates on my ballots in my community or federally? They don't reflect the state. They reflect Staten Island. So they should be able to vote in races that affect Staten Island, not the rest of the state. Does that make more sense?
Yeah. I'm just looking here in New York.
Right.
Okay.
I'm
And
using New
there
York as
are
an example.
only 4 recognized parties in the state of New York.
And that's my first problem. Get rid of, I don't care if the state recognizes the party. Does the community recognize the party? The state has a bias. Get them out of it. The government has a bias. Get them out of it.
Oh, I agree. And another thing that ties this to is in order to be a recognized party, your candidate has to have received at least 130,000 votes or 2% of the total votes cast, whichever is greater.
That's because they changed the rules because of Larry Sharp. By the way, Jeremy was just with us. I just saw him. But that's because they changed the rules after Larry Sharp in the last governor's race. They changed the rules on him. They changed the rules on all the third parties and made it hard. It used to be 50,000. And then when the Libertarian Party got to 50,000, they changed the rule to 130,000 to kick them off.
Now, I personally think that you should be able to register for whichever party you want to register for, whether it's Democrat, Republican, conservative, working family. And the only reason why conservative and working families are even in there is because the Republican nominee often is the conservative nominee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. The Democrat nominee is often the working family nominee.
More often than not. Yeah.
Okay. And to me, number one, you shouldn't be able to be a nominee on multiple parties. Okay. You should only be able to be a nominee from one party. Secondly, I think that we should again be able to have parties that may not necessarily be recognized by the state, but should have ballot access. Okay, regardless. Okay, and yeah, maybe there is some type of threshold. Okay, i.e., a certain number of signatures needed, or whatever. Okay, in order for a candidate to actually get ballot access. But I don't think they necessarily need to be, number one, belong to a party, or number two, belong to a state recognized party.
See, but New York has that. Many states do have that, except they have a different set of rules for the Republicans and Democrats and third parties. If you're a third party running, you get a different number, which is higher than if you're a Democrat or Republican. So I want to, my thought is, let's simplify it. Everybody has the same number and everybody is recognized as soon as they hit that threshold. Once you hit the threshold, everyone's treated the same, because if we don't, they already have the system, and the system is gamed against third parties.
And then the other thing also, okay, if a party has multiple candidates and they decide to hold a primary, it should not be a state sponsored primary or a state funded primary, which is what happens with Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
Okay, they are state sponsored and they are state funded. Okay, the Libertarians don't get that. All these other parties, the Constitutional Party, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that are out there, they don't get that luxury.
But see, that's why I'm saying if we make it community based, then that community, if they're funding, the funding goes to everyone in that community who's running that has representation. And it splits.
Personally, I don't think states should fund anything as far as candidates go.
Well,
The only thing the state should be funding is the actual manning of the voting. Okay, the state should pay for the voting machines. The state should pay for the poll workers. And actually, poll workers should be volunteers. They shouldn't be paid anyway.
usually do it if they don't get paid.
Okay, and the cost of printing the ballots, and that's it. Okay, the state should not be funding primary elections. The state should not be funding all this other stuff. The state should only fund a general election. Okay,
I get
and the
that.
state should not be giving money to any candidates, even if it's given the same amount of money to each party. The state should not be funding any candidates at all.
I get that. I get that.
Okay, and yet we see it. We see that states fund both Republican and Democrats. States fund Republican and Democrat primaries. States fund all the stuff that are partisan that they shouldn't be involved with at all.
Because the system it's a closed system, and that's the problem. It's a closed
and that's what they're forcing. Okay, and I think, like I said, I think it should be okay. Regardless of what party, you need to hit a X threshold of signatures to get your name on the ballot. Regardless of what party you decide you want to belong to, and if there's going to be a primary election because the Democrats have 10 candidates on the ballot because 10 candidates were able to garner that many signatures, then the Democrats should hold their own primary at cost, at the expense of the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Okay. It should not be at the expense of taxpayers.
I agree with that. It's not what we need. I would agree with that. We need the overhaul we need in our elections to, at this point, we do need an overhaul in our elections because no one has confidence in the elections. And we're seeing that today. There is no confidence. People do not trust the elections, which is making us a third world nation, essentially. Our voting is third world. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not just one side that doesn't trust the elections.
No, everyone doesn't.
Everybody across the board doesn't trust our elections right now.
Yeah, and that makes us third world. And the only way that we can fix that, which will address voter apathy, which is the core problem right now. And so the two factors are we don't trust the elections, so no one votes. So apathy and trust, they are synonymous. They're the same thing. We need to overhaul the system, not to make it easier, because you could have voting all year long and the numbers won't change. And that's something that no one really talks about. Mail-in voting, early voting, none of it has changed any of the numbers. We had 43% this year. We last 2018, we have 48%. It's still 4 out of 10. We have 4 out of 10 people voting because in the off years, because they don't trust the elections. They don't trust the votes. And that's why we keep seeing, and these numbers have been dropping since 1952 around the nation, in New York specifically. So it's because we have more and more apathy. We have less and less trust. We are now in a third world environment in our elections. We need to reform the system and how we are doing an election, not the access or the time frame, but the system itself. We need to open it up. And I think the fairest way is that community-based 10% threshold. Every community gets to have that, independent of any other community in any other election. I think that's the best way. but we have to do something because
Yeah.
what we're doing now absolutely isn't working, and we're becoming third world.
Oh, I agree. And I want to touch on this comment from Jason from Bing.
Sure.
Why should taxpayers give money if candidates are not required to debate? Should there be a stipulation to accepting funds? Well, first
Yes.
off, I don't think taxpayer money should be going to any candidate, regardless.
Hmm.
Okay. That is not what taxpayer money is for. Taxpayer money is for the good of the taxpayer. It's not for the good of candidates. It's not a means for candidates to get money to advertise. Okay, that's not what taxpayer funds are for. Okay, if a party wishes to give candidates funding, then yes, that's something totally different. And you are welcome to donate to your party of choice, whichever party that may be. Okay, but as taxpayers, our money is gone into a communal fund that is to benefit all taxpayers. Okay, it's not to benefit one group or another group. Okay, it's not for political parties or political processes or elections. Okay, the only taxpayer money that should be going into elections is to pay for the cost of the election machines, the cost of printing ballots, and that type of stuff. Okay, the stuff that actually are needed in order to run and operate the election. As far as candidates go, there should be no funding from taxpayers going out to the candidates. Period.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would
And
agree with that.
honestly, that is where I think a lot of corruption comes from.
Well, that's where some of it comes from. There's a few sources, but separate of the funding, going to Jason's question, should there be a stipulation on a candidate? I think there already is. I think if you decide to be a candidate, you are obligated to debate. You are obligated to express to the public what your views are, what you stand for, what you believe is represented in that community, and what your goals are, and that you must have, and you should, and I think you're obligated to confront the opposition who have a different view of what the community believes and what they're what's important to them. I think that's very critical, and I think it's an obligation because you are not representing anyone if you don't debate, if you're
And
not telling people what you stand for.
and honestly, this is where our media actually is letting us down. Is by
Yeah.
not having these debates. Um, Regardless, okay, if a candidate decides they don't want to debate, the media should. Let me start over on that statement. The media should automatically hold debates, okay, for whatever office it is. Automatic, okay. Every news, every journalism source out there should be holding a debate of some sort,
Yeah.
okay, for whatever political office, okay. If it's a local, then your local radio stations, your local TV stations, etc., should be hosting these debates. And if multiple media sources need to team up together in order to host a debate, then so be it. Okay. And they invite all the candidates to that debate. Now, if a candidate decides not to show, that is going to be very telling come election time. Okay. I don't believe a candidate should be forced into debate. But if a candidate chooses not to debate, I think that should be very detrimental, especially if that debate has already been scheduled, invitations have been sent out, okay, and it's a known debate that's going to happen, then plain and simple, it should happen, okay. And if a candidate doesn't show up, then that's going to be telling to the voters that they can't defend the positions that they hold.
Well, you know how simple this is. All of the news media are using public airwaves. They're using public access from the government. You know, they're paying for their radio signal, their TV signal. They're paying the government. They paid for a license to get that signal. So they are using public means. Therefore, they should, on day one, January 1st, every one of the news media, they should have their meetings and work this out amongst themselves. And very simply, they have a schedule every for their local communities. Every doesn't matter if you're a local TV station or radio station. On January 1st, you should be able to publish on this day. This is the election. We know the elections that are going to happen that year. Okay, fantastic. This is the day that we're going to have the local county legislators race for these county legislators. Here's the day we're going to have the state assembly race on. Here's the day we're going to have the congressional race on. Publish that date. It isn't an and the candidates, since it's January 1st, every candidate is aware this is the day that the public will have this, or rather that the news media will publish and record. This is the debate. This is the day. It's not a question between the candidates on how many debates do I want to do that'll make me look good or make me look bad. They don't get the option. The media has already published it because they're getting, this is a requirement as part of their license, which is why they have public service announcements. They're required to do that as part of their license from the government to have access to the public. Well, part of that access to the public is also including you must publish and hold a debate for every election in that community and you have to select a day on January 1st or January 20th, doesn't matter what day it is. By this day, you must have a date that these debates will be held, and you will make sure that the public has access to it. The candidates have the choice to join, to have that debate, or not be part of that debate. That's on the candidate. They have a choice. But the public is informed this is the day it's going to happen, guaranteed. Here's the debate. It is an obligation that has already been provided. Takes out all this because I've seen so many elections. 17 years I've been doing this. And I can tell you, it's a debate amongst the campaigns where how many debates are going to make my candidate look good? How many are going to make them look bad? What can I get away with? How late can I have it to influence voters or not influence voters? There's a whole math and calculation there. Why did John Fetterman have only one debate, and why was it scheduled when it was? To be able to give him the opportunity to look as good as he could and yet have enough time so that the media could deflect from the story and make people forget about it. That's why it was scheduled when it was scheduled, and why it was only scheduled once, and why they had so few questions that were actually addressed that matter to voters. It's a setup. It was a complete setup. I think you get around that by saying, okay, you're reaching out to the public, your news media, your major news media, you're using public access. Therefore, you must provide this as a public service, period. I think that's easy. And I guarantee you not one politician will agree with me on that.
No, I guarantee they won't either. Okay. And we already know that most politicians don't agree with our positions on a lot of the stuff anyway. Jason from Bring
No, they're
again brings
terrified.
up the
They
other
are
problem is how do you fix monitors? Okay, that's
by the news media.
actually fairly simple. It can be actually be done a couple of different ways. The host media can choose their own monitors,
Mhm.
okay, and they can actually lean questions however they want to lean them. Or you can have if multiple media sources are hosting a debate, then you have a panel of monitors.
Well, I'll make it even easier. I've got an even easier idea. If the news media have made a public service announcement to provide the public with those specific days, so you know June 3rd there's going to be a local debate, whatever it may be. Well, the public has up until May from January 1st till May to submit their questions for those candidates. And you can list as many questions as you want from January till May. And the top questions asked by the public are the questions that will be asked of the candidates, period. So every question is a question of the public, and it's only the top 15, 20 questions will get asked in that debate. So the public is in charge of the questions that's going to be asked, as well as getting the access and getting that debate. Make it as simple as possible. It's got nothing to do with the news media or their bias. It's got nothing to do with the parties and their bias.
And actually, that would actually be a better form of debate anyway, because then you actually address the issues that are a concern of the people.
Exactly. And now they're serving the public again. You're not telling us what you want us to hear or ask the questions you want us to ask. You don't want us to ignore things that, is it climate change or is it the economy in a recession? No. 80%, I believe it was about 80%, 82% of Americans, number one issue was the economy, which meant the recession, inflation, interest rates. That was the number one issue in America in 2022. The number one issue that was being presented by Democrats was climate change and abortion. The number one issue being addressed by most Republicans was crime. Notice they didn't actually get to the questions that most of the public wanted, which was talking about the economy. So let's get this back
and it seems like they always avoid those questions.
Well, yeah, because they don't have an answer. That's primarily it. They don't have an answer to this because they screwed the pooch so badly in terms of the economy. But that's yet another thing. But this is a solution. If 80% of the public are saying, we have a question about the recession, inflation, interest rates, whatever it may be, and it's about the economy or it's international policy or it's whatever it is, this is what the voters care about. That's the questions on it's not picked by the news media who think, well, the public just doesn't know enough. They don't get to choose this. I want to talk about climate change because I think that's important. Well, yeah, that's great. Mr. Reporter, international reporter, making 3 times, 4 times as much as everybody. You're not living in the community. Screw you. I don't care what he thinks or she thinks. I care what the people think. They're the ones who are voting. They're the ones who are going to be affected.
Right.
Let the questions come from the public. Have a specific date already assigned so that the candidates know they can choose to go in or not. They know the questions that are coming from the public ahead of time, so they're prepared. So it's no questions like, I didn't know that question was going to be asked. Sure you did. We have 5 months of people asking the questions. We had a month to publish these are the top 20. You know what's going to be asked at this debate. Now you just have to be prepared and answer the question. You can't say you didn't know. You can't say you didn't know what day it was going to be. So can't even say, oh, I can't schedule that into my campaigning. You already know the day. You knew it before you became a candidate. You knew what day it was. You knew what the questions were. Answer the question. I think that's the easiest way. I like this. I like this idea. I gotta write up something for this.
Yeah,
I gotta write up a bill to try and get that passed.
I think that this will be a great way of doing it, honestly, because I do believe that the American people should have more of a voice into letting the candidates know what the issues are. Because right now, the parties are controlling what the issues are.
Yeah.
Okay, and they are telling us, the voters, what issues we should be worried about. No, okay. I know my concerns are the prices I'm seeing at the gas pump, the prices I'm seeing at the supermarket. Okay, those are real concerns to me. Okay, but very little of that was addressed during any campaign that I saw.
Yeah, most campaigns avoided it completely.
Okay. Instead, they were focused on everything else other than things that are hitting my pocketbook.
Yeah. But I think this is the way we get that resolved. And maybe the audience has a different idea. Maybe if everyone hates it, let me know. But I'm actually willing to write up. And by the way, people don't realize this. You can write legislation. Legislation doesn't have to come from a political party.
No,
It
it does
doesn't have
not.
to come from a special interest group. I have written legislation before that I have presented to Congress. I have written legislation before that I have presented to New York State as well as my local community. Did any of it pass? No, sadly.
Well,
But
actually, we have had legislation that we've written up for several counties, actually, that has been adopted by counties. And actually, a lot of the legislation that we worked on was in response to overreaching laws that were put forth from various states. So you can, okay, anybody can write legislation, and if you think that our Congress members are the ones that are coming up with this legislation that's being put out, think again. Okay, the bills and everything that you're seeing put forth are being done by lobbyists. They are wrote by PACs. They are wrote by lobbying groups. They are being wrote by special interest groups. Okay, very few laws are actually wrote by the people that are meant to represent you. Okay, they are being written by somebody else.
yeah, these politicians don't find out the bill. That's why they don't read the bills. They have whatever special interest, whatever corporate sponsor comes in and gives them a sheet that says this is what that bill means. I mean, the last time we saw a bill that was actually written by a politician, it was the Green New Deal, which was a laughing stock. 5 pages. Everyone read it. Everyone laughed at it. It was a joke. No one could take it seriously because it was absolutely insane. That was the last time a politician wrote their own bill.
Okay, and we don't. Okay, and the thing is you could, just like Michael said, you can write legislation, you can submit it to your representative, depending on where your legislation is targeted. And the thing is, they have the option of presenting it or not. And oftentimes they won't.
No, they
Okay,
don't.
unless it is actually in support of a position they already hold. Um, in order to get your legislation really introduced onto the floor, you have to get signatures backing your legislation. You have to show that this is legislation that people want. So you have to do some footwork. You have to do some legwork. Um, but it is very possible. Okay, legislation that we wrote that was adopted, we had signatures to back it, and that's how we got people in office to actually support it. Other things that you can do is on the local level, getting legislation is actually fairly easy because you have um, the public forum in your council meetings. Okay, both at your county level and at your city and town levels. That's exactly right, Dal. That's how constitutional counties were established.
Yeah.
We were a big part of that, even though we weren't the ones introducing the bills. We were the ones behind the scene writing the bills that were introduced. Okay, some of the language was changed after we presented it. Most of the time it wasn't. Okay, it was accepted as written. So it can happen. Okay, and it has happened. Um, where do
I
we go
think
from
it's
there?
something we need to pursue. I think it's something we need to pursue.
Mhm. No, I
I'm gonna
agree.
I'm gonna write something up. I give me a week. I'll write up something.
Okay, and when he writes it up, okay, we will post that on our website, um, where people can get a hold of it, and we will also set up some type of system where people can actually provide um, support for it, i.e., some type of signature process.
Mhm.
Okay, so that we can actually show that there is support for this. So if this is something that you're interested in, when we get it written, we will let you know on this on this broadcast. We'll also let you know on our website and on our social media platforms
By the
that
way,
this is available.
let me segue. This is one of the reasons why you should be a member of the Liberty First Foundation. One of the reasons why we need members who and their donation, their membership fee, is so that we can not only write up this legislation, as we have just gone over with you, to make sure that it's something that you agree with and that you're on board with us, so that we can then go out and promote it and tell other people to put out the polls, to get petitions on it, to get signatures on it, to present it to our politicians and say, hey, here's something that we have X number of thousands of people who support this. They think this should be a law. We want to present it to you. We want to see why you're going to say yes or no, that you will present this in Congress or state government, wherever level it may be, and say, hey, you tell us why you will or will not support this. Get on the record. This is what your membership helps us to do, to mail them, to put out the ads, to put out the signatures, to be able to let people know, hey, there is a better, more efficient, more effective way to run our government that is more constitutional than what we are getting today, and that we will have more confidence in our government and our leaders. And that's why the membership is so important. And that's why you should be a
And a
member of this.
government that's actually more representative of the people.
Hmm?
Because right now, let's truly face it, our government represents special interests. Okay, it no longer represents people. It represents the lobbyists. It represents the special interests. It represents pocketbooks. Okay, it represents people with money. Okay, and organizations with money. Um, so Michael did start touching on something, and I'm going to go further on this. As you know, or if you don't know already, November 1st, we launched our membership drive for 2023. And what we are looking for is we are starting up a new membership program for the Liberty First Foundation. And for $15 a year, you can become a paid member of the Liberty First Foundation. And what you get with that paid membership is you get access to exclusive articles and content that is going to only be accessible to paid members. You're going to be have invites to special forums where only members are going to be allowed in. That's going to help shape how the policies and how the Liberty First Foundation moves forward. Our paid members are going to have access to webinars. They're going to have access to educational materials to learn how to take this fight to to your communities, um, and a lot of other things. However, there is one other thing. We are going to have member only giveaways, and our first member only giveaway is a custom engraved Henry Golden Boy 22 rifle, lever action rifle. And that is going to be given away to one of the first 250 paid members of the Liberty First Foundation. And you can find out where to join the Liberty First Foundation on our website at l1f.us. Also, you can find the actual event, and I'm going to post it in the chat, and I will also talk about it here at l1f.us / L1F membership drive. Again, that address is l1f.us / L1F membership drive. And you can go there and find the information and become a member of the Liberty First Foundation.
Yep. And it's so important. And I am very serious. I have written legislation before. We at Liberty First Foundation have written legislation before. We will follow up on this. I'm very serious because I think I truly believe in. I think everyone in the comments, I think everyone in the channel agrees. We have to do something to get confidence back in our elections because what's happening now isn't doing it. And we can't keep going with this. Dal had asked, is New York State still a Democratic stronghold, a supermajority? Yes, New York State is still a single party rule supermajority for Democrats that does not reflect New York State. And who has confidence that a party that doesn't reflect the state is going to be, I mean, think about it. 5 counties are going for Democrats out of 62. That tells you something. There's a lot of lack of confidence. This can get that confidence at least a little bit back, I think. It should.
Our government, especially more recently, actually, I'm not even going to say more recently. It really started around the 1900s. Okay. 1910, 1920s, and on. Our government has become less and less representative of the people and more representative of special interest groups. And the more that we see that happening, the less people are going to be heard. And it really started with the Progressive Party and the progressive agenda of setting up these executive agencies, okay, that have no accountability to the people. And let's be honest, most of those executive agencies are the ones that are responsible for the laws that we're supposed to abide by, okay, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. And that's actually how a lot of our members of Congress avoid accountability is by having these executive agencies actually write the laws because they have no accountability to the people. Okay, that's one of the things that we are actually working towards is trying to restore the Constitution, and one of the primary components of the Constitution is all legislative acts are to be conducted by the legislature, i.e., legislation is supposed to be introduced, debated, and passed by Congress. It's not supposed to be enacted by the ATF, the FCC, the FAA, the FTC, the FCC. I mean, the list of alphabetical acronyms, the EPA, goes on and on and on, like some type of alphabet soup. Okay, and none of those agencies have any accountability to the American people.
Yeah.
And they have very limited accountability even to Congress. We see all the time on C-SPAN these committees, okay, in these hearings where they bring to account various agencies. And I've yet to see one of those committees that actually caused a change in the agency that they're trying to rake over the coals.
Yeah, they
Okay,
yell at one or two
so
people, and then that's it.
okay, I mean you don't see any accountability. These agencies are essentially autonomous. They have no accountability to people. They have no accountability to government. So so where are they accountable? And in a sense, they have none. They have zero accountability. So they do as they wish. They do as they want. And guess who pays the cost? We do. We pay the price by the loss of freedom. Okay, we've got to change that. And the only way we can change that is through organizations like the Liberty First Foundation, like the 10th Amendment Center, and some other constitutionally minded organizations that are working very diligently to restore the Constitution to its original intent. However, we can't do it alone. We need your help. Okay, so that's my shameless plug to try to get you to become a member of an organization that I think is very worthwhile. I mean, I put a lot of time into this, and I've also put a lot of resources into it.
Mhm.
Okay, but our resources only stretch so far. We want to accelerate this process, and we can only accelerate it if you support us.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, and I think it's absolutely vital. I mean, we try to do as much as we can. It is tough. It is tough. I'm trying
Okay.
to get an answer for one of the questions out there. Bear with me 1 second. Hmm. So, right now, Republicans are 8 seats away from gaining the majority, with 25 seats still up for grabs. I think they'll get it. So,
I think it's kind of interesting,
yeah,
again, how the last election it was known almost immediately. Now, this election, the count is being drawn out for weeks in some cases. Um, I'm I'm very skeptical about that. Okay, and thing is when the irregularities of the last election were brought up, we were all told we have to trust the vote. We have to trust it. We have to trust it. Why are we not trusting that now? Okay, why is everything taking so long to verify, validate, and so forth?
because
Okay,
it goes back to the same thing that no one trusts this anymore, and they're overcomplicating the system on things that aren't increasing the trust and confidence in the election. It's real simple. Do the count, give us the number, and then say, okay, let's do an automatic audit. People would trust that.
yeah,
It doesn't take 2 weeks to count the votes they've already gotten. They already have the mail-in ballots. They already have the in-person votes. Just count it. It doesn't take that long. We've done it. We did it with paper ballots in a night. You can't tell. We did it on presidential races with paper ballots in a night. You can't tell me we can't do this electronically in 2 weeks. It's ridiculous. It doesn't take this long.
no, it doesn't. Okay, and honestly, you should have the results the next morning.
They can.
Simple. I mean, it's simple.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, our ballots are fed into a machine. It's counted, it's categorized, and it's done. And at the end of the night, that machine spits out. There were this many votes for this candidate, this many votes for this candidate, this many votes for this candidate. Okay. So those results should be handily there that night. And if they're not, something's wrong. Okay. And even if you had to hand count each ballot, there's enough poll workers, there's enough volunteers and election people working the elections that it shouldn't take more than a night to have all those ballots counted.
Again,
Even if they're hand counted.
Yeah, even we used to hand count ballots, and we could do it in a night with hundreds of millions of Americans voting, tens of millions of Americans voting. We've done it. It's not that difficult. It can be done. They're choosing not to do it. And that's the thing we have to highlight. They are choosing not to do it because it can easily be done. We have already done it in the past. This new idea of, well, we're making it more secure is making everyone feel like it's less secure because it should be faster and easier to get a number. There's no reason why it takes this long. I have yet to hear a good reason why it takes so long.
And honestly, with this taking as long as it is, it makes me feel as if the vote is actually being manipulated.
How could you not feel that way? How could you not
It
feel that
is.
way?
Totally.
Oh, there you go. You got your voice back.
Well, I couldn't hear you guys earlier.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Someone's calling though.
Oh, I'm sorry. My wife is also talking to my daughter.
Step out of the car.
She's gonna step out for just a second and finish her phone call.
All right. Well, how are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Just stuck down here in California for my wife's cousin's wedding.
No,
Yeah, that's one of the states that's having a real hard time counting its votes.
I noticed that. Yeah, I've been watching kind of back and forth, seeing where things are going, and it's been interesting to look at this and step back and look. I pull up my phone every hour and look at things and what's going on, and it's just been nuts. But no fraud in this election. No, none. Mm-mm.
No. For all the social media censors out there, we have not once said that it's been anything but a secure and safe and accurate process for 2022. We have not alleged that anyone has cheated at all. But it's been a hell of a process. Yeah, we just have questions about the process, not the result.
Mm-hmm.
That's for every censor out there, just in case they were curious.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I have a lot of questions over the process because, quite honestly, it makes absolutely no sense how this election is supposed to be more secure, yet it has taken this long to determine who a winner is. Okay. And, and a lot of these races aren't even tight. And they're still having this issue.
Yep.
There's no, I have yet to hear an argument or a presentation of an idea why it takes so long to count a vote. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult. I've yet to hear any reason for it.
I would imagine there's some sort of unfavorability with the way the votes are going, and so it's being delayed as long as humanly possible.
Which takes away from the confidence. Am I wrong? I've been saying this all night. We've been talking about it all night. That it's not about the ease of the vote. It's about the confidence in the vote. That's why that's why 4 out of 10 voted. It's because people don't trust it anymore. And when we see that you can't count the votes in one night electronically, why should I trust it?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's why these ballots are made with the little I mean,
Yeah, they got a scan code barcode on the ballot.
Mhm.
the standardized tests results are back quicker than vote is.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you guys have already talked about it. I was watching your show earlier, Vass, and you were talking to was he a mayor or is he a congressman? Hmm?
Trust. It was Adam Brown, a trustee for their city.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just listening to that as much as I could while we were driving around down here and doing some shopping, and I found some of the stuff you guys were talking about interesting, and it makes me think about, it's kind of like stuff that I don't know the guy, nor can I speak for him, but he made a couple of promises while he was on the show, and
Mhm.
I wonder how he was able to make promises as a trustee, let alone, and that just kind of brings up that confidence you were talking about is you can't trust anything anybody says anymore.
No.
Well, that's why I asked him and I made him promise. I said, for people who haven't seen it, I was interviewing a politician whose a city trustee. And so he made a statement, a promise about the local economy and businesses. And I said, okay, and give me a date. And give me an exact date? And he did.
Mhm.
And because I called him out, I said, okay, I want to know so I can hold you accountable. We need more of that.
Mhm.
Now he's on the record.
Yep.
Whether he gets it right or wrong, he's on the record now, and we'll hold him accountable to that.
Yeah, summer 24, the mall will be booming, you said.
Yeah. Well, I'll give him a month, give or take a month. I'll give him that. No problem.
Yeah.
But by the winter, the mall should be booming.
Yes. And you should be able to tell by spring if it's going to be or not, if they're still under construction or if they're hum-hawing around about it because they ran out of money again.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
and I just want to bring back, okay, speaking of candidate promises. Whenever a candidate promises that they are going to do something, the first question that any of us should ask of that candidate is by what authority can you make that promise?
Well,
Yeah.
I think I kind of hit on that a little bit, but he's this town trustee, like city councilor in many places. He's supposedly deals that are going through in that region.
Let's go. Okay.
All
right.
You got to go.
I got to hit the road. We got a 45-minute drive ahead of us. We're going to head out. You want to say hello?
Oh, hi.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Okay. Have a good night, guys. Be safe,
You guys
and
take care.
we'll catch up.
Definitely. Thank you for
safe travels.
coming in.
Yep, absolutely. Bye.
Yeah. And to answer Jan's question, no, it's not black only businesses. Not that I don't think anyone would care. I mean, the fact is, no one should care. No one should, it should never be a question. It should be, here's the business. The owner is the owner. As long as you have the money, the funds to do so, to try to make the risk and go out there and try and create your business, as long as no one's stopping you, anyone should. And if a community has only white businesses or only black businesses or only Asian businesses, that's the people who are willing to risk their money. I don't care. But we shouldn't artificially change that.
No, we shouldn't. Okay. And we've touched on this too. Okay. The difference between equity and equality and how equity is the inverse of equality.
Absolutely.
Or the antithesis.
Yep.
We are what we push for and what we strive for and what we need to be pushing for as a nation is equality under the law. Okay? Because there's going to be inequities, regardless of how anything is modeled, how anything is put together. There will always be inequities. And as I said, within the last few shows, the only way to have true equity is for everybody to have nothing.
Yeah. Sadly.
Okay. Because once people have something, there are a certain subset of those people that will take whatever they have and turn it into more. And there's a certain subset of those people that will take whatever they have and waste it.
Yep.
Okay. And right there is inequity. Okay.
Yeah.
Plain
Some
and
will
simple.
have and some will not.
Okay. So unless everybody has nothing, there is no such thing as equity.
But
Okay.
it's part of those lies that they tell us to make us feel good that they are
Mhm.
doing something that, this is going to work. We promise this time it'll work. We'll pass one more gun law and the criminals will finally follow the law. It's never going to happen, folks. Never going to happen. That's why we call them criminals. It's not going to happen.
Exactly. I mean, by definition, they do not follow the law. By definition.
Yeah. So you can pass as many laws as you want. They're still going to break them. So that promise is a false promise. You're going to be safe now. No, you're not. You're going to be any more safe than before because the criminals don't care whether you added another law onto the 22,000 that already exist. It doesn't literally, there are 22,000 gun laws in the United States, actually more than. Adding one more isn't going to suddenly make the criminals go, 22,001, got to start listening now. Not going to happen. And so it's the same thing all the way down the line. They're promising, oh, we're going to make it equity and everyone will have what they need and everyone's going to get free stuff. It's a lie. No, not going to happen. Same thing with gun laws. It's a lie. It is a bald-faced lie. It's meant to make you feel good, sleep well at night, and ignore the fact that you're going to not get whatever the hell it is they just promised you.
Mm-hmm. And touching on free stuff, there is nothing that is free. And even if you are receiving quote unquote free stuff, guess what? You're paying for it. Some way, some shape, some way or means, you are paying for it. You may not monetarily pay for it, but you are paying for it in freedoms. You're paying for it in liberties. It is costing you in some way, shape, or form.
Well, think
And
about the $2,000 checks that everyone got, the COVID
right,
check from Biden. And how much was inflation? How much did inflation take away from you? You paid for that check out of your pocket with inflation because he spent money we didn't have that he had to print. Inflation went up and the money disappeared from your pocket. And then it also disappeared from your 401k. Oops.
and guess what? You paid a lot more than $2,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're not done paying yet.
Nope. No.
Okay, by when everything's said and done, I imagine that we are going to pay at least tenfold.
Well, I could easily say, depending on how you want to look at it, the average IRA, the average retirement account in America lost somewhere around $34,000 in the last year. $34,000. You got
Okay,
a
so that's almost
$2,000
30-fold.
right. So you got a $2,000 check. You lost $30,000 on your IRA, and inflation has been averaging about 8%. So that means you lost out of your income, average American, $30,000. So that means you lost somewhere around an additional 10, 3, let's call it 1,700. So in total, in the last year, the average American has lost about $36,000 for a $2,000 check. Gee, was that worth it?
And it's not over with.
No.
I mean, we haven't even hit winter fuel prices yet,
Nope.
and that's going to be horrendous.
Or the
Um,
food crisis.
Food prices are still raising every week. Fuel is back on its way up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, we are seeing rent rise. We are seeing insurance premiums rise. I mean, across the board, we are seeing everything is increasing across the board.
Let me
Um,
show. Let's show them. I want to show everyone this. You're gonna love this, folks. You see what
okay.
I'm showing,
Yeah.
folks? This is from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can look this up yourself. Okay, this is from November 10th, 2 days. Excuse me, one day ago, yesterday. The government's telling you that inflation went down. It's only 7.7% inflation in the United States. They're doing a great job. What they don't tell you, food inflation went up in October. Cost of getting food in your home or out of your home, it went up. Energy prices, let's see, the cost for gasoline is up. It went up last month. The cost for energy, all energy commodities went up. How about energy services? That was down 1.2%, but it's up for the year 15%. Electricity, last month it went up. Yeah, gas prices went down slightly temporarily, but that's before OPEC cut oil, which is affecting you now. It wasn't affecting you last month. But if you notice, everything that you go to the store for, everything that you buy, everything that affects you on a daily basis, you and your family, is up. But they're telling you everything's okay because it's down. The only thing that went down really is when they don't count food and energy. When they don't count food and energy, yeah, things are down because you're not buying clothes. Well, it's winter. Of course, you're not buying clothes. You're not going out to the beach. They're lying to you, folks. They were trying to make this is how they pull the wool over your eyes. Don't pay attention to the fact that food is still going higher. Don't pay attention to the fact that gasoline, electricity, they're all going higher. No, no, no. Oops, sorry. Wrong thing. Don't pay attention to that. No, no, no. The thing you need to pay attention to is that the headline says inflation went down. They are lying to you.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I just want to end the show. Okay, we've been going a little over 2 hours, and we can talk on this a lot more, but we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this week. I do want to touch on the fact that turnout for voting was absolutely dismal, and it wasn't because voting is inaccessible. It was because the people no longer feel like they can trust their voice be heard. And that's really what it amounts to. And with that little segue, I'm going to do another plug for our membership drive and basically invite you, if you want to be represented, allow us to be your representation. Okay. At the Liberty First Foundation, becoming a member of the Liberty First Foundation, we will represent you. We will be your voice. Okay. But in order for us to be an effective voice, our funds only go so far, and we need your help. And we need your help to, number one, help us spread our message and to reach more people, but also so we can actually be an effective voice for our members. Okay, we do a lot of things. We have this show every week. Okay, Michael has his show every week. We come on from time to time. We go on a social media. We are interacting with the people that are making these decisions for us. Um, Now, in order for us to do that effectively, we need to have some funds to help us. Okay. Our pocketbooks are only so big. Michael works, I work, Frank works, Jeremy all work. Okay. And our dollars only stretch so far. And with inflation, they're stretching even less. So it's becoming harder for us to be able to keep going. And that's where we need your help. So currently in the process of conducting our membership drive for 2023. And under that membership drive, we are asking you just $15 a year. Okay. That's a little over $1 a month that we are asking you guys to help us push forward with our mission of restoring the Constitution back to its original intent. Now, for your $15 a year, you're going to get access to a lot of exclusive content that is only going to be available to members. You're going to get access to us directly that non-members are not going to have access to. You're going to, through webinars and other venues, you're going to have direct access to us. You're going to have access to educational materials at either free or reduced prices. Um, and the thing is, with more members, our voice gets louder. Okay. Our voice becomes a lot more significant. Yeah, right now we are somewhat effective at getting our voice heard. However, if we have 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, a million members of the Liberty First Foundation, guess what? People are going to take notice and they are going to recognize when we say, hey, here's what our members want, they're going to take notice. They're going to listen. But again, we need your help. We need the help of you. And one of the ways that you can help us, besides becoming a member of the Liberty First Foundation, is you can also like, share, comment, and subscribe to our social media on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have social media presence on all four of those platforms. You can find us under the Liberty First Foundation. Just do a search, and we are available on all those. Share this broadcast. Okay. Yeah, we're live now, but it's on our social media, and you can share it to other platforms, share it through email, whatever. Help us get the word out. Okay. Let people know about the Liberty First Foundation. And that's how we can actually start representing you better. Okay. The more people we have supporting us, the easier it is for us to sway the course of this nation. Okay. And we aren't trying to push it in a direction that people don't want it to go in. We want the people to be in control. That's ultimately what the promise of the founders was. And that's what the promise is that we want to restore. We want a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We don't want a government of the special interests, by the corporations, for the elite.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not what the United States is all about. Okay? The United States is a representative republic, and we need to restore the representative part of that republic. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight. I want to thank all our viewers. I want to thank everybody that commented in the chat and joined the conversation with us tonight. And I want you guys to take a little time, do a little bit of research. Okay, if you don't agree with what we say, challenge us on it. I encourage you to challenge us on it. Okay. We don't know everything, but we do a lot of research. And if you believe we're in error on something, challenge us on it. Okay. We are more than happy to present your side of the argument. Okay. Whether you're left, right, center, up, down, I don't care, honestly. Okay. Because we need those conversations. I'm going to say good night. We will see you next week, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, guys.